Guys, welcome to Knockers on the Bottom. I'm your host, Jay Miller if you like. So let's get into it. The Cowboys lose kind of in heartbreaking fashion to the Cincinnati Bengals, 27-20. And multiple heartbreaks in this one. You guys see the graphic up there. I've got DeMarvion Overshown in the background making a hell of a play in the game that he made. But, it's with a heavy heart that he's out for the season. He tore 3 ligaments in his knee. Now, I have been seeing some rumors floating around that his MCL actually might still be intact. So it might just be an ACL and a PCL. But still, he's basically going to need reconstructive surgery on his knee. And so that's going to be tough. He had torn his left ACL last year and worked so hard in his rookie year to get back this year, was playing awesome. He was the second best player on defense. He was the best player not named Michael Parsons. He was all over the field. In this game, he showed it, once again. But honestly, he's been pretty consistent all season. You give him snaps, he makes plays. And now, he's torn his right ACL and PCL. And he did it so late in the year that he actually might be gone for all of next season, too. So, the upside is he got to play this year. He got to get some NFL experience. He got to see what offenses were doing. And you could see each week he was getting better. He was getting faster. He was playing faster, reading and reacting, and kind of doing a little bit of everything, right? We saw him in this game. He gets my star up, one of my star ups, which I was going to get to at some point. But since we're talking about him, I might as well get it out the way now. He got one of my star ups during the game because of the way he was all over the place. He finished with, I believe it was 4 tackles. He forced a fumble. He had 3 pressures. Literally everywhere. Early on in the game, the Bengals, on a second down, tried to sneak a tight end out into the left flat. And he came screaming up and just put a hell of a hit in the tackle on the tight end and brought him right to the ground. And you just knew what type of day it was going to be because Overshown came ready to play. He's one of the few players on our team that seems to come ready to play every single week. And I'm not taking a shot at anybody because of all the injuries this year. There's been a lot of players out there that don't necessarily have NFL experience. When I say came ready to play, as in whatever you expect DeMarvion Overshown's ceiling to be at this point in time, he comes up and he shows that ceiling week after week, right? He's raising the ceiling each time we see him play. But whenever you see him play, you're like, all right, I think Overshown can do this week. I think he can do that this week. I think he can, cover. He can pressure. He can sack. He can, be great in the run game. He can be great in the passing game. He's a really good communicator. Once he sees it and diagnoses it, he plays with instinct. All that stuff, he brings it every single week. There's not a week off that he takes. And then from hearing from his fellow, teammates in the locker room, they talk a lot about the man he is and the person he is and his infectious personality. Overshown has quickly become one of my favorite players on the team. So it just kind of sucks because he loses pretty much a year and a half. The recovery from the surgery is about 9 to 10 months. So if you take that for what it is, that means just the recovery process alone brings him to September to October. Now, that's just recovery, right? That's not getting into football shape. That's not building strength. That's not, putting weight on that leg and getting confidence and planning and cutting and doing all the things that makes him such a great player. That's just, hey, I'm fully recovered and now I can start working up to being me, right? A lot of times we get this thing in our head, and I don't do it, and hopefully you guys don't do it, but you play some video games, right? You play Madden, and you see the guy's out for 9 months. To the day, 9 months, if his rating with his injury went down to 64, as soon as the 9 months is up on Madden, he's right back to an 89, right? Immediately. You can put him in, plays the same way immediately, but these are humans, right? This is a human being, this is a human man, and it doesn't work that way. So even though at 9 to 10 months, technically he's back to square one, that still means, hey, now I got to build confidence. Now I got to build strength. It's a leg injury, so I haven't been able to run. I haven't been able to exercise. I haven't, in that way anyway. He can lift weights and stuff like that. So I assume he's going to come back just as strong as he's been. But as far as your stamina and your ability, like we know NFL players are some of the most rare athletes, right? You'll put them up there against almost anyone. Maybe save track and field, right? Because track people are a whole different animal. But other than that, I mean, NFL athletes are explosive. Like that's your least athletic person in the NFL would be the most athletic person you know in your life. So it takes a little bit more than just healing for him to get back. So I mean, that's around September, of next year that he would just be healed. And then after that, he has got to build strength. He's got to build confidence. I mean, if the Cowboys, are really thinking about it, maybe they, try to get him back basically around this time next year. But I think that's only a possibility if the Cowboys are a really good team next year. So if the Cowboys we get to December and instead of being, 5-7, they're 7-5 or 8-4, then that tends to make sense that you get DeMarvion Overshown and you try to get him back. But if we're sitting here and this team is very similar to what they were this year, I kind of think DeMarvion Overshown misses pretty much the entire season next year as well. So with that, that's going to kind of set the Cowboys back a little bit. They fixed their linebacker problem basically in 2 off seasons, right? They had a very bad linebacker problem. Last year, they got to the point where they were playing a safety, Marquise Bell, at linebacker because the numbers were just so low with Leighton Vander Esch's neck situation. And so they went to the draft, and last year they got DeMarvion Overshown. He tore his ACL, which is why the Cowboys are kind of in that situation. And then this year, they go out, they sign Eric Kendricks, they draft Maris Leofau. Overshown comes back from the injury. They already have Damone Clark, so now the numbers look a little bit better. And it depends on what we see with the coaching staff. There's just so much up in the air. This injury is really big because you have Maris Leofau. He's going to be a pretty solid piece. He's going to be here for a little while. But Kendricks is all of a sudden a free agent after this year. Now you have DeMarvion Overshown out for this year and next year, and you don't know what's happening with the coaching staff. So what does that say for Damone Clark? So Damone Clark now, for the rest of the season, is going to get a chance to see what he can do. But moving forward, I mean, the Cowboys are probably going to have to address this with a pretty decent draft pick. And by decent draft pick, I mean somewhere in the first 3 rounds. They're going to have to address this position once again. So they spent a draft pick on linebacker in the 2023 draft. They spent a draft pick on linebacker in the 2024 draft. They signed a free agent. They signed some undrafted free agents. And after thinking, hey, now this is one of the strengths of our team, they're actually going to have to throw more resources at this. But I guess this is more of an off-season conversation. We'll get to that, after the next 4 or 5 weeks. We'll start talking more about kind of the whole picture and overview of what's happened this season. But I just wanted to make sure I gave Overshown a decent amount of time here because he's one of my favorite players, and it kind of sucked to see him go down last night. Now, getting to some more startups from last night. Fast Money Rico was in the building, 130 yards, career high for the second straight week. I don't know why all of a sudden we went away from running the football. Mike McCarthy today in his press conference talked about some of the game plans that he had set up, and he had more hash mark game plans, which means, hey, from the right hash mark we run certain plays, and from the left hash mark we run certain plays because we can dictate how the defense lines up, and therefore we can dictate the looks that we're going to get and what kind of offensive plays we're going to run out of those looks based on what side of the hash we're on. Now, it's interesting because the hash marks in the NFL are very close together. It's not like college. In college, they're very far apart. So when you end up, on the right hash or the left hash, one side of the field is much wider than the other side of the field. But in the NFL, it's not necessarily like that. They put those hash marks pretty close together so that you kind of have some room on either side of the field. But it looks like he kind of wanted to dictate, maybe he saw something on film that I didn't necessarily see. So I'll pay more attention to that in the upcoming weeks because I feel like I missed something on my film study. But there was obviously something he saw that he was like, hey, with left hash mark, we can run these plays. Right hash mark, we can run these plays, and we need to dictate the plays that way. So because of that, later on in the game, when it looked like the Cowboys were actually doing well and should have actually kept running the football, they kind of didn't. And that was kind of weird, especially with Rico Dowdle averaging over 7 yards a carry. There was a sequence late in the fourth quarter where we ran 3 straight pass plays, couldn't get any yards, had to punt the ball, and that drive was over. And if you have a running back getting 7.3 yards per carry, you think at least one of those 3 plays he would get a run because he was gashing the Bengals. All the stuff we showed on tape, I know we went through that run where Rico Dowdle had a 17-yard run up the middle. He was making people miss. It was the same thing in this game. Rico Dowdle was beasting it. So he's definitely a star up here. And a star up to the offensive line because no matter what happened out there, Cooper Beebe leaves in the game with a concussion. Tyler Guyton doesn't start. Zach Martin's out. And all those rotating pieces, and Rico still had holes to run through. He still exploited things. He still ran powerful. He still was decisive. He still made people miss. And like I said, career high in rushing yards. So it was very interesting to just see how well the offensive line played, no matter what different things were thrown at them throughout the course of the game. That was really nice to see. It makes me hopeful for the future going into next year that the Cowboys will have some depth there on the offensive line. They still probably need like one more really good piece to be like a dominant offensive line, but at least it's not like in years past where if one of your offensive linemen go down, the game is over. The Cowboys just have no game plan. I mean, they played well yesterday. Also, a star up to Micah Parsons. I've seen a lot of people kind of intimating that Micah Parsons wasn't involved in this game. I heard things like he was on the sideline or, he didn't play as well. But he actually had a lot of pressures in this game. He had a lot of hits on Joe Burrow. He forced a lot of incompletions on third down. He was all over the field. I know he didn't get multiple sacks. I know he didn't get a tackle. So as far as, watching the game and looking at the stat line, if you're just, looking for stats, he didn't have a stat for you to mark down, but he did draw a couple of holding penalties. He probably could have drawn a little more. There was one play where the guy was literally like clotheslining him and they threw the flag for holding. And it was like, awesome, Michael Parsons drew a holding penalty. That's great. The very next play, the guy did the same exact thing and there was no flag. So he drew 2 holding penalties, but he could have drawn a lot more. But the refs aren't going to throw holding penalties every play. That's just not how it works. It's like if you're a defense, you want to be aggressive pressing at the line of scrimmage. Yeah, they might throw an illegal contact or a pass interference on one play or whatever. But if you do it every single play, I mean, they're going to let you play, most of the time. They might throw 2 or 3 a game, and 3 a game is a lot. So, but that means out of the other 55 plays, you just get the manhandle the receiver. So it's the same way. Lineman gets a manhandle Michael Parsons. He could draw a holding penalty on every play if you really wanted to look at it that way, but that's not what it is. But I wanted to give also a star up to the defense. For most of the game, they held the Cincinnati Bengals to 20 points. There was a notorious play that we'll get to eventually that allowed the last 7 points to go off for the Cincinnati Bengals. But for the most part, that defense played really, really well. You talk about Overshown. You talk about Micah Parsons. I mean, seeing Diggs and Bland and Lewis out there, for the first time, it was really nice to see, even though they didn't necessarily have the most productive game. Jamar Chase 8 and 8 consistently. But I do think as these guys get more time on the field, those things will change. It was the first time back for Diggs in a few games, and it was Bland's only his 3rd game back. Jordan Lewis was your only regular starter out there that has been playing pretty consistently, but it was just nice to see those guys out there. The defense played well. Really enjoyed what I saw from them for most of the game. Now, let's get to our star downs. Excuse me. So one of our star downs is going to be Aurier. I know AO, he didn't want to do what he did. It wasn't on purpose. Him, going after the ball and it popping off his shoulder and the Bengals recovering. But that was a backbreaker, man. That was a backbreaker. The Cowboys played the right defensive game plan, and they got a block on the punt. So the special teams came up with the right play, and all he had to do was get away from the ball. I know when you look at the game film, you see that he was kind of turned on the play because it was a punt. So he's down there blocking the gunner, blocking the gunner, blocking the gunner. The play goes off. He hears the sound of the crowd, when he hears the from the ball being touched, and then hears the crowd roar. He turns around immediately to see what's going on. Ball's bouncing towards him. So there is a little bit of, is this a fumble? Did we fumble it? I don't know what's going on here. Let me get the ball. It's football. The ball's oblong. It takes weird hops. But, the Cavante Turpin's running at him going, don't touch it. Don't touch it. Bones Fossil is on the sideline going, don't touch it. Don't touch it. And he's like, so I'm going to touch it. So it's just one of those things where it sucked. In the grand scheme of things, the Cowboys were a 5-7 team. It wasn't like, oh my God, they're going to go win the Super Bowl this year or anything. But the defense and the special teams, because the defense got to stop on that drive. And, there's 2 minutes left in the game. The special teams gets the block, and you're thinking, hey, there's less than 2 minutes of this game. Now we're going to get this ball. We're going to recover it. It was like such a range of emotions, because immediately I was like, they blocked it. And then the very next second, I'm like, oh no, he touched it. It was just like elated and deflated all within like 10 seconds, not even 10 seconds. It was like 2 seconds. It was just such a range of emotions right there. Because I don't know. I know I'm not going to tell you guys how to fan, but when I watch the game, I watch it hard. I'm a Cowboys fan. I'm up. I'm cheering. I'm pumped up. I'm beating my chest. I'm down. Then I'm up again. So, it's just one of those things, and just seeing that whole sequence just kind of sucked, honestly. Also, a star down, not overall, but Deron Bland, that last play with Jamar Chase. I do understand that you're probably deflated at that point after that whole situation with the punt. Jamar Chase gets the ball, puts a move in Deron Bland, takes it in for the score. Like I said, Jamar Chase was eating. He was eating all day long. He was freaking Mike Tyson biting people's ears. So, it's not like Jamar Chase all of a sudden sucked and Deron Bland should have been able to do something to mitigate, Jamar Chase being pretty much the second best receiver in the league this year. We all know Justin Jefferson's that dude. But Jamar Chase, he got that ball, and all you had to do was bring him down, Deron. And I'm not saying that if he brought him down, that would have changed the outcome of the game, because honestly, that just leads to Cincinnati bleeding the clock and probably kicking a field goal like the Cowboys would have done and getting out of there with a 23-20 win. Jamar Chase scoring quickly actually gave the Cowboys a chance by getting the ball back and being able to possibly do something with it, still having timeouts, being able to go down the field. But the offense was pretty sloppy all night, so most likely something like that wasn't going to happen. And that leads to my third star down. My third star down is Cooper Rush, man. This is one of the worst games I've watched Cooper Rush play as a starting quarterback. I understood more the Philadelphia game because it was his first game playing all season. He doesn't get many reps in practice. He didn't get many reps in the preseason. So, when he came out against Philadelphia and he was a little bit flat, that was understandable. But this has been weeks now of him getting reps. And I'm not saying weeks of him playing bad, because he's actually played pretty decent. But I'm saying this has been weeks of him getting reps. And to see him, really miss a lot of throws in this game, it was kind of disappointing, because there were some plays there to be made. And honestly, if the Cowboys make a couple of more plays, I'm not talking about the CeeDee Lamb interception, because honestly, CeeDee Lamb got knocked off his route by the safety, and the other guy intercepted it, although I don't feel like that was an interception. I'm pretty sure that ball hit the ground. I know his hands were under a little bit. They do say the ball can hit the ground as long as you maintain control, but I don't feel like he maintained control. Just like I feel like the fumble, by the Cincinnati Bengals in the game was a fumble. I feel like that receiver was making a football move, and I do feel like it was T. Higgins, and I do feel like that ball was punched out, but they called that. I mean, it's football, right? You get those things. It's a game of inches. Sometimes the fumble is not going to be a fumble, and sometimes the sketchy interception is going to be an interception. So it's just one of those things where you get a lot of these weird plays, but Cooper Rush did not play as well as he needed to throughout this game. And honestly, I felt like Mike McCarthy should have leaned on Rico Dowdle a little bit more with the success he was having during the game. But that's neither here nor there. It's over now. Cowboys lose 27-20. And we'll take a look at this game once the film comes out and get a little bit more granular into some of the things that we just talked about now. But that's all I got for you guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. You can follow me on Twitter at JMillerIYL. That's JMiller if you like. You can also hit me up on knockersonthebottom@outlook.com. Again, knockersonthebottom@outlook.com. You can also hit me up at knockersonthebottom@gmail.com. You can leave comments below. Anything specific that you want me to cover, any questions that you have, I'll take them here. I'll take them via Twitter. I'll take them via email, put it into a mailbag, make it a formal segment. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. We're at 34 subscribers now, so we're growing every single day. Let's get to 50 so I can give some Cowboy-centric merch away. But thank you guys so much for tuning in. I love you guys. Until next time, I'm your host, J Mill. J Mill, if you like. This has been Knockers on the Bottom. Peace.